Hey guys, got a little something on my mind about capacitors. Some time back, I got into a 1962 Fender Blonde Bandmaster tone ring cabinet. I mean, it was a real nice amp. And these are the caps. Some of the caps came out of that amp, mostly filter caps, but there are some other caps. I got an old mustard, a very cool mustard cap I had changed out of there, and probably should change some more, and I'm sure I will. Now, this is a capacitor tester, and a lot of guys go to these old capacitor testers. They don't do as good a job on telling you exactly what the microfarads are, like a good Fluke or something like that will. But what these things will do is they'll actually put a working voltage, a working DC voltage, on these caps, and that'll tell you if these caps leak, and if they leak, it can cause a myriad of problems. But some caps, you know, they use caps for a lot of different reasons in electronics. They actually to obtain different effects and whatnot. Some caps are used to keep certain voltages from not mixing with each other, for certain voltages for running in certain directions in a section of the motherboard, and it's not just what you think a cap does. It's general purpose. When engineers put things together with these caps, they achieve different outcomes. Now, this cap, I forget what section of the amp it was in, but it's an 8 microfarad, and it's got a working voltage of 150 volts. And what you're going to see with this cap, let me get my multimeters on. I have got a couple of meters going here, so we can keep an eye on the voltage that I'm actually going to be putting on this cap. But what this is going to show is how leaky these old caps very often are. Matter of fact, I'd say probably 90% of these older caps are going to be leaky. And I've been checking caps here all day, man. I got tons of caps, and I've been playing around with them. And what I'm finding is it's probably somewhere in the range of 90% of these caps have about 1/3 of the working voltage left in them that they were designed to work under. If these caps got 400 volts on them, you're lucky to get 120, 130 volts out of them before they start to leak. And this cap is a good model for that. You see, I'm actually in the backwards range. I'm going to start turning my voltage up on this cap, and you'll see this open area, this Magic Eye tube. It starts to close up, and then it opens back up, and that's good. That's what it's supposed to do. It's fighting that voltage, and it's fighting to keep it in check. We're now at 7 volts, 7.2 volts. Now we're going to keep on ticking it up, and I'm at 15 volts right now. And look at that. That voltage is doing pretty good. Now we're at 24 volts. Voltage is coming around, just hanging in there. Now we're at 32 volts. Now we're at 37 volts. Now we're at 39. We're at 41 volts. Now we are at 45 volts. And you can see it starting to close. We're at 48 volts. We're at 50 volts now. And look how small that gap has got. Let's go ahead and give it a good tweak. And now she is at 54 volts. And that... you know, this whole time as it's closing, this cap is leaking, right? It's leaking. And when you get to this point here, it's almost what you would consider a dead short. I mean, the voltage is leaking back through that cap to the point where this cap is now at 62 volts, and it is at dead short. I'm not going to push that cap any more than 60 volts. But what that says, that cap will work up to 60 volts, struggling to keep up what it's designed to do. Past 60 volts, you're basically shorting out your board, and you're causing voltages to go the wrong direction in the board. You're causing the wrong types of voltage. Sometimes caps are used to separate AC voltages from DC voltages. Sometimes you can have, matter of fact, most of the times, in most old amp boards, you will have AC voltages working together with DC voltages. And what you're witnessing here is a very poor performance of these old caps. Will that amp work? Hell yes, it will work. And you will have what a lot of the amp amp heads, we'll call it. Oh, they'll say, man, that thing's got a nice dark rich tone, or is velvety, or they got all of these names for the way these amps sound. But really truly what you're hearing is an amplifier in distress. These amps did not sound like that when they were new. They did not sound like that when they were designed. And the recordings of music, like they were recorded back in the 50s and 60s, that were using these amps, they did not sound like that on the recordings. So what you're doing by trying to keep old caps in the board and not change these old caps for fear of losing the sound that the amp has, you're right, you will lose the sound that the amp has now. But what you're going to gain is the sound that that amp was designed to have, and what it sounded like when it was new, when these caps and resistors were in the proper tolerances. So don't be afraid, man. Think you're going to lose the value of an amp because you're changing these capacitors. You know, if it's the looks that you want, you know, man, I stuff capacitors. I'll take old capacitors like this, and I'll open them, and I'll put new capacitors in there, and I'll drill a hole through the end and make the new leads come out, and you can't hardly tell that it was stuffed. And you know, if it's the looks you're after, then do that, man, and stuff your caps and keep the thing looking right. But I'm telling you now, there's a lot of parts that can die in an amp. That's a big problem, and a transformer is probably one of the biggest. And if you're trying to get a transformer with the proper numbers on it that was made back at the time that amp was, that can be a chore, sometimes impossible. So, but when these things start getting out of tolerances, you get a lot of heat, a lot of resistors start burning, a lot of tubes start burning, a lot of transformers start heating up. You ever seen a transformer? The insulate on that wire is actually like a type of varnish, and when you cause these transformers to run hot, you break down that varnish and they short out, and all kinds of problems that you're giving these amps for what you think is a sweet tone. Well, it's not a sweet tone, man. It's something that came up after this amp was, many years after this amp was made. This tone was created because the amp is suffering. So do yourself a favor, man. If you love these old amps and you want to keep them going, and you want to keep them sounding like they should, get the old electrolytics out, and don't be afraid to go even deeper than that. I know a lot of people like the blue caps, the blue molded caps, and the mustard, like the old Astron here. But man, if they're out, they're out. Sure, your amp will work with them, but you know, trying to give these old amps a long gig while playing, you know, 6-7 hours a night with the wrong voltages going through the board, that's a hell of a cruel thing, and they're not going to stand up forever. So do your amp a favor, man. Give it the proper levels of voltages through the board. Help this thing along. They'll last you a long time, and I guarantee you, they will sound like the amp did back in the day. So, you know, the people will argue, man, till they're blue in the face about old caps versus new caps. And, man, I've heard it for years and years. And when it comes right down to it, when they built these amps, they did not stuff old out of capacitors in them. And they did not stuff them with old out of range capacitors. I mean, resistors. They gave them the stuff that was new and the stuff that was working and could stand up to the voltages they were designed for. So if you want these amps running and sounding how they're supposed to, change the old caps. Save them in the bag like I did. Someday you may sell that amp for a couple of $1,000s to some guy that wants to put all this crap back in and start cooking the transformer. That's his business when he owns it. But for now, while you're working this amp, if you want it to last your cycle for you to have these old amps, change out the out of spec caps and resistors. You will not regret it. Okay, guys, that's my 2 cents on this whole debate about old caps versus new. And then I hope you liked the video, and give me a like, and subscribe to the channel. Even I'm sure I'm going to be doing some more electronic videos. And so that's it for me, man. Y'all have a good day.